Hi, I'm Sarah Randolph, and my town hall meeting is over homelessness in Omaha. Today I wanted to discuss an issue that is very well known yet discussed very little, and that is the homeless rate in Omaha, Nebraska. Homelessness is an issue that has been around for centuries and will continue into our future until there is a solution. Homelessness has been increasing in recent decades, and I feel that it needs to be addressed. So what is homelessness? Homelessness is typically when an adult is living in a space that is not meant for human occupancy, a shelter, or a safe haven. It is also considered when the individual is staying in one of these locations for at least 12 months or on at least 4 separate occasions in the last 3 years, where the cumulative total of the 4 occasions is at least 12 months. There are also considerations on whether to deem a child homeless. If a child does not have a consistent and sufficient accommodation every night, then that's when they are considered homeless. There is a common stereotype that the homeless population suffers from drug addiction or mental health disorders. Some homeless individuals may struggle with these issues, though it's not always the case. The duration of homelessness is very individualized because it depends on why they are homeless and their efforts in emerging from it. When trying to pinpoint the typical duration, the gap in survival rates becomes slightly smaller as durations increase. It remains substantial at 12 months. So the median duration of cultural homelessness is approximately 4 months, while the median spell of literal homelessness is around 2 months. The original term homelessness was used in the United States in the 1870s to describe wandering vagrants that are looking for work. The idea was that the homeless individual was basically going through a life crisis. In the United States, there was not record keeping of how many people were actually homeless. Homelessness was first a national issue in the 1870s. It was facilitated by the construction of the national railroad system. Urbanization, industrialization, and mobility led to the emergence of quote-unquote tramps riding the rails in search of jobs. That was a quote from National Academics of Sciences. In more recent times, homelessness has been affected by unseen events. An example of this includes the Great Recession of 2008. This caused a national economic downswing that impacted financial markets globally. It also affected the banking and real estate. This event caused home mortgages to foreclose, loss of life savings, jobs, and homes. Due to such a financial collapse, many individuals faced homelessness. Roughly 170,000 families became homeless in 2008, which was an increase of 11,000 families from the previous year. The following demographical data is obtained through a point-in-time count in Omaha. A point-in-time count is where there is a count within a single night in a specific geographical area. The age in 2019, there were 280 total number of persons in this count, and the number of individuals under 18 was 180. The number of persons between 18 to 24 years old was 10, and lastly, the amount of people over the age of 24 was 90. Gender, in this 2019 count, 169 identified as female, 111 identified as male. There were no adults who identified as transgender or gender nonconforming. Though when the count involved children under 18, there were 2 individuals that considered themselves transgender. These are 2 visual images for the point-in-time count from 2019. The first image is from the gender count, and then the second one is for the racial count that is on the next slide. So for race, in this 2019 point-in-time count, the majority was white at 136. African American number was 98. There was 1 Hispanic Latino individual, 11 people that were American Indian or Alaska Native, and 35 people considered themselves to be multiple races. There were 0 Asian individuals, 0 Native, Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander individuals. For economic status, there was no information on the specific economic status of these individuals, though it is my speculation that a majority of people are low income or have no income at all, since they are not living in their own homes. There was no information regarding the education level of the homeless population, and this is most likely due to being so individualized. So there's not one single cause to homelessness. The top 3 causes of homelessness include income, domestic violence, or mental illness. The different resources for homelessness in Omaha includes the Department of Health and Human Services, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Open Door Mission, Sienna Francis House, Nebraska Homeless Assistance Program, and Department of Housing and Urban Development. I'm going to discuss one of these resources that I felt was very interesting and well known in this area, and that is Open Door Mission. The Open Door Mission has the mission of meeting the needs of individuals and trying to create change in their lives rather than just giving them money or a place to stay. The 4 core values that they have are rescue, redeem, rebuild, and restore. First, the Open Door Mission respects everyone as an individual, no matter their background. Everyone is given somewhere safe to stay and cared for with dignity. Besides providing a meal and shelter, they also focus on building trust with these individuals and pushing them to a better life. So what's being done in Nebraska? For the first statute, 81-1281, there was an approach to make housing more affordable. This approach attempted to discover the needs and considerations in making housing more accessible, available, and of better quality in Nebraska. Individuals were also placed within a group to represent a certain area that is involved with housing issues in Nebraska to assist with the establishment of the strategy. This statute directly affects the homeless population in Nebraska because affordable housing is one factor that creates homelessness. The second statute, 68-1604, this is the Homeless Shelter Assistance Trust Fund, and it is intended for the financial assistance of shelters for homeless individuals. The goal of this statute is to give temporary or permanent shelters as well as develop programs that promote self-sufficiency. The Homeless Shelter Assistance Trust Fund Act is given in the maximum amount of $75,000 per fiscal year and is authorized by the legislature. The last statute, 77-1333, focuses on the need for affordable housing. There is a matter of public concern and represents a legitimate and compelling state need affecting the general welfare of older residents. By providing specific rental prices in housing projects, such as 5 or more houses or units that receive federal low-income housing tax credit, are considered a safe type of shelter that is also considered to keep individuals away from homelessness. So, for the first approach to homelessness, I found an implementation that was proposed in San Francisco that I felt could work here. In San Francisco, they are known to have a high rate of homelessness. In 2018, a proposed bill called Housing for All was put on the ballot to raise the tax levy on commercial property owners to 2%, which was a 1.7% increase. Funding would go to low and middle-income housing units or shelters for the homeless population. By increasing taxes, the homeless population can receive more assistance in finding shelter. If they are given support in finding a home, then they can focus on finding work and providing for themselves and their families. So by doing this, about $100 million would be funded to those in need. The funding would come from increased taxes through commercial property owners, but would include nonprofit companies or retailers. But would exclude nonprofit companies or retailers or property owners that make less than $1 million per year in rental payments. The implementation would take place once legislation were to pass the bill. Once passed, it would be necessary to plan who would be included in the increased taxes and notify them of such. Then the city would need to plan out whom the funding would go to and how it would be divided to produce more housing or give assistance. It would be best to find the areas of higher rates of homelessness, and I believe that those that would be most equipped to do this approach would be landlords in order to implement all necessary changes. The stakeholders for this approach include legislators who would be passing the bill, commercial property owners who would be paying for the tax increase, and those who would be organizing where the funding would go. The pro of increasing taxes is that the homeless population would be given help in finding adequate shelter. In order to emerge from homelessness, basic needs such as food and shelter are necessary. A con would be toward those who have to pay the increased tax. Unfortunately, this would most likely upset many commercial property owners. This approach has not been passed yet in San Francisco, so the effectiveness of the approach is not studied yet. So for approach number 2, unfortunately, the traditional approach to homelessness is essentially criminalizing the behavior of homeless individuals. An example of how some areas criminalize behavior is when a city deems it unlawful to stay in a tent on city streets. A study done by Yale Law School showed that in Connecticut, the homeless population is often criminalized and a lot of homeless individuals are forced into breaking laws. When laws are in place that limit behavior that a homeless person must possibly do to survive, it is causing a vicious circle of them entering the criminal justice system. By addressing how the criminal justice system handles the homeless population, there can be changes made to prevent this cycle from continuing. The implementation of reducing the criminalization of homelessness would occur in several ways. First, there would be a criminal justice task force similar to the one used in Connecticut that addresses anyone homeless that is also in the criminal justice system. Also, a grant for $150,000 would be able to give funding for those re-entering the community after leaving the criminal justice system. Also, there would need to be lobbying to help implement adjustment to the laws. Lastly, the funding would be coming from state or federal funding. The stakeholders would include the legislative positions in order to pass grants and assistance to those exiting incarceration, as well as the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. This would be considered stakeholder because it is within the United States executive branch that carries out plans in preventing homelessness. The pros for reducing criminalization of homeless population would reduce the resources use of police officers, paramedics, and firefighters, so that way they can avoid small infractions caused by homelessness and attend to more emergencies. Another pro would be helping prevent homeless individuals from re-entering incarceration. A con would be having to change present laws. It takes a lot of time to make change happen through the legal system, and it would also take money. The effectiveness of this approach has not made much headway in change because there has not been any changes in laws. There was no evidence of whether it improved the situation or not. These are my references.